Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again for another episode. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to have back with me Andrew Gay. Andrew is my partner in crime for a lot of the local podcasts that we do. But today he's stepping out from the ones and zeros he typically handles as our producer to be the guest. So, welcome back, Andrew.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
And Andrew, we're going to talk about one of the things that you're really passionate about, and that's Leadership Kerr County. Why do we need to talk about Leadership Kerr County in early July or late June?
Yeah, so I think, number one, first and foremost, the applications are open for this year. That's on the forefront of our minds, those of us that are on what we call the steering committee or the board that kind of helps run everything for Leadership Kerr County. And we got till the end of July to get those applications in. We already have some that have already made it in and have been completed. But of course, we end up with the situation. When I say we, I'm talking about the steering committee or the board. Every year it ends up where we usually end up receiving more applications than what we take. So if you're out there and you're interested in getting involved with leadership, make sure you get those applications in early. So we got through the end of July to get those applications in. And that's mainly why we're talking about it right now this summer.
Andrew, could you remind our audience, what is Leadership Kerr County?
Yeah. So the program itself originated in the late 80s. And it's funny, I turned 37 this year. We're on class number 39 and it tracks, basically by the calendar year. So the program is 2 years older than me and it's been around for quite some time. And it is an affiliated program through the Chamber of Commerce here in Kerrville, but it's for educational purposes. But you do get some networking. I mean, it checks all the boxes, right? Networking, you get education for things that you otherwise wouldn't maybe be exposed to. And as someone that owns a small business, runs a business, even just as someone that is participating in the local economy here, that knowledge base can be very beneficial to kind of help understand what it takes to run a city and a county and how to navigate some of those into different entities or different parties that are involved. And I went through the program about 3 years ago. And then right after I was a participant in the program, I had the honor to join the steering committee. And so that's what I've done the last 2 years. And this will be my third and final year on the steering committee. So I'm really excited. I get to participate as co-chair this year. So me and Jody Tillman, one of the other steering committee members that was actually in my class as well, class number 36, we get to co-chair and kind of run the thing this year. The other thing I would mention about just a brief overview of the class that kind of gives some context there is we have basically you show up every single one day for the entire day, every month for about a 9-month period, starting roughly around September. And you get exposure and hear from our local leaders, local business people, from everything from city governance to nonprofits to we have an economic day, we have travel and tourism. I mean, it is literally every single facet of the local economy is packed. We section those off by days, and then that day is packed with leaders, representatives from those organizations that really the meat and potatoes of what it takes to run that facet of our local economy. And the amount of light bulbs, I would say, that go off in those classes, and especially as me as a steering committee member and alumni of a previous class, to watch these new classes come in. And I'm talking about all ages, all races, creeds, religions, everything, different backgrounds. Everybody seems to be able to learn something from Leadership Kerr County, and it never ceases to amaze me to kind of watch that process unfold in real time throughout the class year.
Andrew, next year, I believe the Texas legislature will be in session. Will there be a legislative or Austin Day?
Yes, there sure is. Thank you so much for asking that. That's legislative day. So we have a government day, like a local government day, where we talk to the city, the county, and those participants there. We even tour the jail and the courthouse on that day. But then we have a legislative day where we pack everybody into a bus and day trip to Austin and back. And that day in particular, last year for this past class number 38, that was one of my favorite days. And yes, I had a hand in putting it on. But I'll tell you why it was one of my favorite days is because we got to do a few things that I didn't actually even get to do while we were in Austin during that legislative day during my class year. One of those in particular was the Bob Bullock Museum. which was when we visited that, I set it up, for the class to visit that in the back half of the afternoon on the schedule that day after visiting the Capitol and all that. And I was mind blown at how awesome uh, that museum was. I mean, it was like nothing I could describe. I didn't expect it to really be like that. I guess is what I'm saying. It has 2 theaters in there. One is an IMAX. It tells the complete story and the history of Texas from the 1600s all the way up to present day, and it does it in chronological order. So you get to walk up. There's 3 floors. I think you start on the first floor and then walk up accordingly. And it was just a really interesting museum, and it's a nice element to add that history component to kind of complement traveling to the Capitol, hearing from some of the legislative representatives that represent our area here. Case in point, Andrew Murr, who is not running for reelection, had previously hosted lunches for us, and we get to hear directly from him. And yeah, the representatives and the faces change over time, but most of them are very happy to receive us, to have us, to host us, to talk to our class participants when we day trip to Austin and back, because some of those are potential constituents for those representatives. So it's a nice complementary relationship, and you really get to hear from the mouths of those that represent us up in Austin. So that's one of my favorite days of the leadership class in general. But this year, with session being in, it's going to be a madhouse at the Capitol. Last year they were not in session. The year before that they were. So I've been to the Capitol on this day trip for leadership when it's been in session and when it's not. And even though it can be a little hectic when they are in session, it tends to be more fun. You get to see some of the press conferences with all the cameras and the lights and all that kind of stuff happening outside some of the chambers. And so it always makes for a very interesting trip.
Andrew, you mentioned your age. What do you say to the 20-something entrepreneur? Is Leadership Kerr County designed for them as well?
Yeah, and I think that it absolutely is. It's the short answer, but to expand on that a little bit and think about today's world where we're inundated with TikTok and Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and social media, and there can be some obvious benefit to doing targeted ads through some of those platforms, but nothing can ever be, in my opinion and in my mind, there's nothing that can ever beat like word of mouth networking and just spending time with people face to face. And I think that if you're young and you're ambitious and you're trying to get involved and you're just trying to understand your community better or even how the community works, because let's face it, most of us, life tends to be it's a continuous learning process. So like I mentioned earlier, everybody has something to learn, but if you're young, even more of a reason to try to get involved in something like this, because I see people that are not necessarily that age, they come into leadership and they learn so much. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, "Oh, if I would have known that it was like this, I would have done it earlier. If I would have known there was this much more to learn, I would have done it earlier." Not just from a networking standpoint and trying to grow roots here in the local community from maybe a business or economic perspective, because there is that element of it too, but just from the sheer educational perspective of understanding what it takes to run a city and a county and all the people involved, all the parties involved, all the relationships involved, you get a very robust look at that and a feel for it. And the younger you are and the sooner you can get exposed to that, I think the better.
Andrew, what about someone who works for a nonprofit? Do the city government, do private sector, do any of those issues really apply to them? Or why is Leadership Kerr County also applicable for the nonprofit employee?
Absolutely. It's for everybody. And we as professionals, you a lot of times you're trying to perfect your craft in one industry or another, and you're kind of focused or even hyper focused on developing one particular skill set. And when you look at things like a local economy, there's, economies are made up of all of these individual parts that have their own kind of system that works within them. And if you don't spend time in those other pockets of the economy, it's really hard to kind of get an idea and build out a picture of what that's like and what really happens there. And this is an opportunity to kind of peel back those layers and peek behind the curtain, if you will, and be able to see some of that stuff and see how it happens. And, we tour I was just talking to someone last night at a mixer, and they had talked to someone that was in the class previous this last year, and somehow they ended up sharing with them about how much they learned about where we get our water from. And this person was a business person. They had, high business acumen. They probably understood a lot of the stuff that maybe we would talk about in some of the other days for leadership, some of the other themed days for leadership. But being able to understand in depth just from spending one day of going through the process of, where our water comes from and what does that water treatment plant look like? And then, the wastewater, how do we handle that? And it's, there's always something for anybody to learn in this program. And I think that what most people find is the learnings go a lot deeper than what they would expect. So even if you work for a nonprofit or you work for city government already, there's still all these other pockets of our local economy that you probably don't spend a lot of time in, and therefore you probably don't really know how a lot of that works. And to make matters, to exacerbate things a little bit, I think that what a lot of us do is we kind of make subconscious assumptions about what happens in that sector. We don't really understand it, or we don't know people that work directly in that little pocket of the economy. Inevitably what happens is we get in there and the learning starts happening. And the next thing you know is you're overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I didn't understand. I didn't understand this. I didn't know this rabbit hole went that deep. I didn't understand that there was this many people and this many teams involved with managing where our water comes from. And I also didn't understand that it was unique about how the sources that we get our water from here in Kerr County. We have 5 different sources, and helped basically pioneer the ASR, the Aquifer Reserve System for the state. And there's all these little things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I think everybody has something to learn, regardless of what pocket of the economy or profession you reside in.
Andrew, you mentioned a couple of things I want to sort of wrap this episode up on. You said this is the 39th class at Leadership Kerr County, and you've mentioned having that personal connection. I'd like to maybe ask you to say a few words about the connection it gives you literally to everyone else who's gone through this class, who's had this experience, and how it's really helps to create a leadership group in Kerr County that you can call upon, and even people, ordinary citizens like me can look to as people who've had this deeper dive.
I think that we don't give enough credit to bonding time, and that's the simplest form of what I could boil it down to is you bond with these people in the class over one thing or another, whether it's the group project where the class is responsible for putting on Easterfest at the end in the spring, at kind of towards the end of the class. So you get a working knowledge of what it's like to actually participate and work with these people in the class as your peers. But not only that, there's a retreat it's an overnight retreat at Mo Ranch that kicks everything off. And there's intentionally some stuff in there that we do and facilitate that helps kind of that bonding experience. And you leave the class not just with associates that, you're kind of working together in the same community and you maybe share some of the same goals, but I mean, you really and truly leave with connections, real genuine connections and relationships and friendships with people through bonding over various issues throughout, the life of the class. And I think that gives a more meaningful outlook to the way that your life feels day to day living in your local community. It did for me. I feel, when I go to places like the mixer I went to last night, I'm a lot more comfortable in those rooms because I've been around these people for years now. I was talking to someone last night and said, hello, nice to meet you. It's my first time here. And, I remember when it was like that, but it's only because I've been showing up to those rooms and doing things like this and participating in something like leadership for the last 10 years that I now have those deep bonds, and it's helped grow my roots here locally. And it helps me navigate what I need to navigate for life, whether it's business or my personal affairs in my local community with a lot more confidence. I'll give you a case in point. So my business partner and I in my day job just closed on a piece of real estate that is a house that we're transitioning into an office. It was zoned correctly by the city. And matter of fact, I wouldn't probably have any of the knowledge that I do about some of those intricacies with zoning and all that if I hadn't participated in Leadership Kerr County. But also, I had connections at the city. I knew people that worked at the city specifically through leadership that I had developed relationships with. So when we bumped up against something that we weren't really sure about how to handle or how to navigate, I reached out to someone that is literally now my friend that works at the city, and I could have a conversation with them about, hey, this is what we're dealing with. What do I do here? And it was a way for me to access some kind of guidance or advice for something that I otherwise wouldn't have access to had I not built out those relationships previously. Yes, it's very near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about it and what it's done for me, not just in my profession, but in my local community as a whole.
Andrew, before we leave, I wanted to ask you if you could tell our listeners where they could go to find out more about Leadership Kerr County and even apply.
Absolutely. Kerrvillechamber.biz/Leadership Kerr County. Or if you just go to kerrvillechamber.biz, that's the main website. You hover over the programs tab, and it is one of the first programs that pops up. So you just click there. You can follow the link. There's a link online that you can click to fill out the application, to download it, whatever you want to do there. And then you just submit it back to the chamber. Or you can find one of us leadership alumni. We have a Facebook page. You can hit us up there, however you need to get a hold of us to shoot that application back to us. But we do have a Facebook page. We do have alumni participation. Just this last year, we started like alumni happy hour after the class days. So we are pretty active on our Facebook page there. So you're welcome to contact us on Facebook as well.
Well, Andrew, I wanted to thank you again, and perhaps we can have a new season of Leadership Kerr County, the podcast.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tom.